She's a guru. You're a guru in training. Give me a second here. Actually, I want to. Okay. I call to order the quarterly meeting of the second quarter of 2022 of the Board of Zoning Appeals for the town of Harpers Ferry. Present at the meeting are Lynn Pechakonis, Secretary, Ed Wheelis, Vice Chair, Chad Gaudier, and myself, David Simmons, Chair. We have an agenda with 3 agenda items: approval of minutes, discussion of the town permit process, and adjournment. So I'll need either need a motion to approve the agenda.
I so move.
Need a second. Second from Chad. All those in favor? Aye. Unanimous. Okay. First item on the agenda is approval of the minutes for the quarterly meeting we had on February 7th, 2022. Need a motion to approve.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. Okay. And second agenda item is the discussion of the town permit process, which is very vague, but it's a big topic that affects our lives as a BZA. So let's see, let me back up a ways. Lynn asked me a while back if we were going to discuss the budget request that I put in, which we said we weren't putting in, and then I put one in. So I wasn't trying to power play. What happened was I had a discussion with the mayor about the permit process and just how I felt there was a need for administrative help in terms of planners and engineers. He pulled Ed in, and Ed and he and I talked at one point, and he asked me to put together a budget for it and a proposal for the budget and finance, and then he said he needed a sponsor. So I kind of raised my hand without asking you guys. So, but I also said, if I'm doing this, it doesn't mean we're managing it. So Ed was there. He said, that's fine. We'll figure out who manages it if it comes through. So anyway, that's where that came from. And I should share that proposal with you guys so you can see it. But basically it's kind of like planners and engineers helping us, set up good processes there and giving us institutional memory with some of these decisions we make, so we don't reinvent the wheel when these similar applications come through. Like even just the one we just did, we should probably document this decision on retaining walls, and the nuance there is important. And I just feel like we lack for staff here at Harpers Ferry, and it impacts so much in this process. So that's why I put that forward to him. And mayor's behind it.
How much did you end up asking for?
It was like $30,000, because I figured you have, and he'd said the high ball, make it a high number, but I kind of thought, if someone's going to put together processes, there's like looking at our forms, making sure like there's one for what we do and it covers everything properly. There's a tracking sheet, but it actually, and you assign duties, and then you've got like somebody helping Kevin with these decisions on like the retaining wall. Like I would feel like he would call them, right? Instead of going to HLC, call them. Or with your project now, he's not going to HLC, he's going maybe the planners and engineers saying, here's the project. Do I have any variances here? Do I have any conditional uses here? And they're helping him
It
interpret
speeds
the,
that process up for the applicant too. the town,
Yeah.
everybody.
so that's kind of
That's
what's
true.
behind it. And even just inspections, to me, I don't know if there's really a standardized inspection process for various types of projects. Like, how many times have you come to your McIntyre?
Where's framing and final? There's 3.
Okay, did you come to all 3?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
Oh, yeah, I'll make sure he does.
Yeah,
I get my
so,
sticker.
okay. Yeah, that kind of stuff, like, there should be checklists, and like, and even like Kevin might not be the guy in 3 years. They're a backup. If we change hands, at least they're there to help that transition and stuff. I just think that's,
I think there is a checklist on the zoning compliance permit.
yeah, it's being filled out, but it's not being followed precisely. Like, the elevations, I don't get elevations almost in site plans, a lot of applications. And to me, those are the first 2 items
Well,
on
that
it.
should kick it back out.
Yeah.
But yeah, there is a checklist, but if that checklist isn't looked at by somebody saying this is incomplete and kicking it back to the applicant right away, not waiting 30 days or 45 days or whatever the case
Yeah.
may be, that's a clearinghouse that Kevin's responsibility is
Yeah.
gonna have to cover.
And it's long, so it doesn't apply to a shed.
It doesn't
Like,
apply to everything.
You know, so you
but
have
yeah,
to
there are
know
certain-
what to
right.
just say no, 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 no. And then sometimes applicants say, I want not a variance, but something, a waiver they ask for.
Mhm.
And like, you know, sometimes the elevation, it asks for a 1/4 inch equals a foot or something. And like, the project I just did for the parking out in front of my house, I did, there wasn't a 1/4 inch equals a foot, it was something else. Like,
But
it gives you the visual.
The same information is there,
yeah.
it's just on a different side.
So that kind of thing.
One of the things I brought up a while back, I think it would be very important, is to have almost a requirement that a project permit applicant should meet with the OCO. Go over those checklists and say, okay, here's the information you need. That's gonna save a ton of time and money. If there is somebody that's out there applying for, say, a building permit for an addition, or whatever the case may be, they submit the information, it either gets kicked back saying it's incomplete, or it's just held, it gets to landmarks or planning or us, and we find out the application is incomplete. You're looking at 30 to 60 days sometimes, and that's entirely unacceptable. From the town standpoint and the review process, to me, those applicants, and I don't know how you do this or get the word out, or somebody comes in to pick up an applicant, and they can get it online too, they must meet with the OCO.
That's been proposed. I remember Sean Amos proposed that a while back when we talked about this. He thought there should be, before it comes in,
Yeah, I mean, this is entirely difficult and
Yeah.
cumbersome, and I've been through
Yeah.
it more than anybody in town, and it's still different each and
Yeah,
every time.
it's can't replicate.
But it's getting better. It's
But-
getting better.
I mean, I think there are complications there because Kevin's not full-time, and so it's during
I
the
totally
workday.
agree, yeah,
And
it's,
so I think it should be encouraged, but maybe not required.
yeah,
I mean, certainly for a big project like I'm gonna build a house, but
It's encouraged. Like, it either is required or it's not. Like, to me, it already is encouraged. Like,
it is
if you're
encouraged.
doing an application,
But the applicants don't know that though, and maybe it should be on the application.
that
You are highly encouraged to
Recommend you
contact,
go-
we recommend, we
Yeah,
highly recommend.
that's true.
in bold
That's true.
letters.
like add that to the application
Maybe
form.
that's what we do.
Yeah.
But Ed's right, nobody's available all the time, you can't. Make sure
Or
coordinate schedules.
have Kevin call each applicant and talk to them about it when it comes in.
Yeah.
Put it on
Yeah.
him.
Yeah.
But maybe just like a note on there at some point,
Yeah,
somewhere.
that's a good idea. Anyway, that's a background. So then we had a meeting with me, Chris as head of planning, Chris Craig, head of planning, Christian, who was a HLC rep. Guy Hammer came in as HLC rep also, Kevin Hamilton, Pat Morse, because she helps him with a lot of the tracking stuff, and then the mayor. And we just talked about process, and that was 3 weeks ago. It was 4 weeks ago. It's probably early April. And we kind of took some applications that were before us, like yours. I don't think yours was there. It was the retaining wall. I had one for putting permeable pavers in front of my house. There was a third one. We just kind of talked through those and what should happen. And tried to specifically talk about what we should do with those, and think of a standardized process with those as sort of like case studies. It's kind of what we did, it was good, except that since that time, the applications that we talked about didn't go the way we talked about in that meeting, I think, and that's like a little frustrating. So, so anyway, what the email you have in front of you is one where I think it's your application. Yeah, I think this was your application, Chad, where Kevin wasn't sure where to go with it. And during that meeting, we talked about him leaning on HLC to help determine if a variance exists for the building aspects of the thing, not necessarily the setback and things, but the actual structure, right? So, so this, and Kevin and Chad and I were talking about this on the stairs before the meeting, but so basically Kevin presented he presented the application to them, and I don't know what the discussion was. So it sounds like they, I thought they were going to come out of it saying, yes, variance, no variance, needs to go to BZA, doesn't need to go to BZA. And then Kevin could figure out what to do from there, but it might have gone beyond that. You probably know more than I do, but.
I know nothing. I didn't even know what was discussed.
Okay. So when they said they were going to do this, I wrote this email that Ed's responding to in his email, where I said, okay, if this is what we're doing, this is what I see the process is. This is how it looks to me. This is what we're doing. Because we had talked about making a flow chart in that meeting with everybody. So, yeah, the OCO gets the application. He should do a completeness check, but he's going to ask the HLC for opinion on materials and architectural features. So, because I don't think Kevin's got the knowledge of Appendix A like we expect HLC to have knowledge of Appendix A, where they can say it's sufficiently similar to what's in there or not. I mean, we even struggled with it here today a little bit, right? Or a lot. But I felt he needed help with that. So that's why I put this flow chart together. And then I said, once they do that, they can decide if it is, and HLC has already said that it is. Why do we have to get involved if there's not a setback or something else? So then he goes ahead and proves it, or works through his process. But if there is a variance, not coming to us at all, or if they do identify a variance, then it does come to us, and then we deal with it from there. Missing in there is like Kevin's got to do the setback looks and the height and the footprint stuff that's in the ordinance. He's got to do all those checks. But that's sort of that's why I said it. I don't think Kevin should be doing the Appendix A check as a part-time guy. I think HLC is our resource for that. And you had reservations for that process, so now's your time to say it.
Okay.
Tell me what you think.
Okay.
Because I'm not.
The OCO position was created to basically reward an applicant who follows the rules. If they come in with a compliant application, they get an administrative check mark and they're good to go.
Yep.
It's quick, it's easy. There's no burden on the applicant. If someone comes in with I can't quite follow what's in the book, I want to do this and do it a little differently and all that, then they get the full meeting schedule. Yeah. But still, it shouldn't be onerous. And I think the way the process was intended when the ordinance was revised was that the OCO would look at an application and quickly make a determination that it is fully in compliance with our ordinances or it's not. And if it's not, he can't do anything about it. He has to send it to BZA. And then BZA can request advice from HLC or planning.
Yeah.
My concern with this is that you're inserting another potential 30-day delay in the already lengthy process to get approval. If the OCO goes to landmarks and it takes them a while before they meet and discuss, and at that point they decide, oh, it needs to go to the BZA, then it's just, I don't want it to become a burden on the applicant.
That's the
my
way
concern.
I feel the same when we were talking out on the stairs about that too. It's, then I'll take my permit application as an example. The only one thing that I could see that could potentially warrant a variance is because of the structure, the way it looks, the physical nature of the structure. I know the materials have been approved time and time again in town. He sends it over to landmarks. A lot of those landmarks people don't have a lot of history in town, may not know that some of those items have ever been approved, those materials. And I feel the same way Ed does, it can really encumber that process and delay things quite a bit. Where if it comes to the BZA, if Kevin says, well, I can't deem this approval right away, let's go take it to the BZA, where it should go, then we could make that decision, okay, we need some comments back from landmarks, or there's a planning issue here. Because if it goes to landmarks and then there's a planning issue, how long does it take to get to BZA before we have to kick it back to somewhere else?
Planning issue is separate from us, so that should be a parallel process.
It should be, but the way this is written is the BZA is the clearinghouse. If the OCO cannot, like Ed said, check off, that application does meet all of those requirements. If it does not, it should come here.
But like McIntyre property is a good case study. Like you had a road.
Oh, that thing was a mess.
You had,
I agree.
yeah, so you had,
We
so
had
that
several
road could
hurdles
go
to jump
parallel, like that goes through planning, right? And then
go to
the
town
building
council as
stuff
well.
goes through BZA.
Mhm.
And it kind of did go parallel, but
Well, we waited on the approval with the road before we even
yeah,
ran the permit through. That was part one of that process.
yeah. But you didn't have to.
No, we didn't have to, but we didn't want to put the cart before the horse.
But let's just say it's it's a parking, you want to move a retaining wall and do something in your structure at the same time, like Mrs. Dennis is doing. Let's say she's doing some other project. The planning can go ahead and approve that right of way work while we're doing our work. They're not connected, I don't think, at all.
How do applicants know if this is a planning issue or if this is,
Kevin's got to know that.
Kevin's got to know that because the applicant doesn't.
And that's my concern with what your process is like, we're putting a lot on someone who hasn't really been trained in our ordinances significantly. Like,
Well, and that furthers my point, then it should come here if he can't check that off and it meets all those requirements, it should come here.
I mean, that is his job, to be familiar with the ordinances. It's the ordinance compliance officer, that's his chief responsibility.
that's not how it's, practically speaking, he's taking documentation and making sure he has it. I would, we can ask him how much. I mean, he's getting familiar as he does more applications, but I don't think we've intentionally pulled out like Appendix A and said, look at retaining walls. I mean, Appendix A is a very large document and has a lot of nuance in it.
It does. There's no way to correct that either.
Yeah, there isn't.
Almost every situation is going to be different.
Yeah.
But this thing is going to get lost if he is the director of the ship, so to speak, and he's the pipeline commander. If he's sending things off to landmarks when maybe it doesn't need to go to landmarks, is my point. I think written in the ordinance, it says that it should come to the BZA. Maybe we could head off a lot of those questions we want at that time, a lot of that process.
What if instead of and I say HLC here, what if what if he goes to the chair or a member of the HLC and just gets some advice as he's trying to make these determinations? Like using that resource, like instead of making it a formal, like, okay, I think this person can't reconcile the materials, I gotta send it to BZA, and then it'll fully go to HLC that way. Like, to
I
me,
think
that's,
he's done that in the past. When I was on HLC, he would, and I don't
Mhm.
think there's anything to prohibit him from
yeah,
doing that. But waiting on a meeting is.
yeah.
So what's the point of historic landmarks?
Well, historically, they used to do the permitting along with planning, and it was planning and council, but that wasn't compliant with state code. So
It basically went from each committee approved it. Planning would approve, landmarks would approve, and then it would go to the council. But sometimes there'd be like this change somewhere and have to go back,
it was really a
wasn't
lengthy
great.
process, and it wasn't. It was developed in '83. State code evolved after that. It was no longer compliant with state code, and we got sued over it, lost. So we had to find a different approach. So we were given two options: either regulate our historic district through zoning, which is the approach we took, or BZA, landmarks could issue certificates of appropriateness. Those are the two avenues that you have in state code to do that. At the time, we were facing the hotel development, and it was felt that legal advice was that the zoning approach was a much tighter and legally defensible approach than certificates of appropriateness.
And that's Mark Sad, right?
Mhm.
Mark Sad is a
He
land use
felt
attorney.
that, he advised that we go the zoning approach to regulating the historic district, which took a lot of the responsibility away from landmarks and put it on BZA. BZA hadn't been meeting that often, and now they meet more regularly because they've taken the burden of that approval process away from landmarks.
Sure, landmarks into more of an advisory
Right. So,
board.
there is the possibility that if the town feels that was in error, they could go back to an approach that uses certificates of appropriateness.
So we could never use landmarks if we prefer, like, are we the ones that choose when landmarks gets called in? Is it our responsibility to make sure that the historic authenticity is maintained without their help?
They are in charge of Appendix A, not totally, they send it to council, but they make the recommendations to what goes in Appendix A. They maintain the inventory of contributing structures. So they dictate which properties are contributing. And
But as far as
they make the annual
decision-making
CLG report.
about permits, they could totally be cut out of the process and never asked to
Yeah.
They have in the
advise.
past.
They could be.
In the past.
And I was chair of landmarks for 10 years when that ordinance revision was placed, and I had great apprehension about it because I saw that it was taking away most of the role of landmarks.
Mhm.
But in the end, I trusted Mark Sad's counsel that if we didn't want to be steamrolled as a town by the hotel, that we should probably take this zoning approach.
So that leaves us as the body that's the protector of the historic district.
It is
But-
We're
enforced
supposed
through
to
zoning,
care.
Yeah, I mean, we're
in charge of zoning.
it's really, and the OCO in a lot of ways, because then that goes back to my question of like determining if the architectural features of a project are sufficiently similar to what's in Appendix A.
Yeah,
If he makes a determination that, oh yeah, then HLC is we're not getting it, it's just getting built. So that's,
And the nuances in that gray area comes from a lot of arbitrary, capricious decision process too. Like, oh, I like round windows versus, I want a casement window. And I've seen those things so many times throughout the years, and you really have to rely on what's in Appendix A. Does this say you can or cannot? So you get a lot of opinionated stuff out there all the time, and that's put on him too. I mean,
and Appendix
he
A
has
should evolve too with
Yeah.
building materials. I mean, it should be probably revised
but
periodically.
that position is granted that authority to somebody too.
And the other thing, we moved away originally, there was a lot of, well, new construction should look like it was built in 1860.
Mhm.
But the Park Service has moved away from that. And they create the standards and guidelines that HLC follows, and they don't really regulate new construction. It's only designed to preserve historic fabric. So I think that's kind of the focus of Appendix A.
So we don't really require new construction to have any kind of historic looking
There's a
features.
little bit about scale and rhythm, like, you don't want to.
Well, yeah, and I think there's language about materials for new construction. Like, I don't think.
So materials, but not style.
Yeah, style is so subjective. I don't think it.
Yeah, let me look up windows because I was.
And the historic district guidelines, what, whoever it is that determines we're a historic district, that doesn't dictate anything about new construction in the area that's the district.
Right, except for
Vinyl windows may be used on buildings where vinyl was available at the time of the original construction. I've got vinyl windows in the house I'm living in right now, and they're terrible. We're going to replace them with something better. But
One of the issues with Appendix A and considering new construction and even remodeling is that the construction industry, as we all know, is so rapid. You have cement board siding and PVC trim that looks like wood siding and wood trim. Vinyl windows that have divides on the outside, inside, and the inside of the glass that simulate the divided light. So a lot of it is subjective, but also this appendix has to keep up with modern building practices as well and still conform to that historic nature of Harper's Ferry.
And
that
that's
we all love.
HLC's job to make sure that happens.
yeah,
Okay.
I've
I'm
actually.
sorry if I'm
no,
taking
no.
this way off
Nope,
track.
nope.
but-
That's
No, not at all, because I think,
it's important for the whole process.
Exactly.
You got to understand that. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
I agree. Because I've checked to them, they have there's an experimental materials, alternative materials process where landmarks should basically have a list, and there's some language in there about we can try some materials and we'll track them and decide if we want to make them allowable alternative materials. So and then there's a table of alternative materials, but there's no spreadsheet somewhere that has, oh, this is on 11 Main Street and this is on, and it's deteriorating. We've looked at it 5 years ago and it looks yellow, or,
Yeah, I know the house on Fillmore used fiberglass, was approved for fiberglass columns, and that was to be a test case, basically. So, but you're right, there's no follow-up.
Yeah.
some of
they're
those
gonna be-
HLC guidelines are based on NPS, not requirements, but materials that they have used in the past as well, because those guys get tired of replacing rotten wood and painting stuff, and, oh, this PVC product, or this type of masonry product, or these kind of windows.
See, windows to horizontal picture, round, octagonal, or bay windows or bow windows shall not be installed unless appropriate to the architectural style of the house. That's
Which can be
So-
found
Yeah.
throughout town.
Each
But I mean, that's,
topic has
yeah,
Yeah.
some
So much.
guidance, like you can't have expanses of white concrete for driveway.
And there's a lot of things that happen without permit or, under the cover of darkness out there, so to speak.
Yeah.
Changes made, windows put in, that sort of stuff. And then, oh, well, that's been approved, but well, then they just could put it in and go back on. There's a lot of that going on.
So there are these 4
Okay,
kind of guiding principles that somewhat guide.
It's a lot.
new
I mean,
construction.
again, it's a volunteer group of people, some of which have a lot of experience and some are new to it. They're doing their civic duty, and Lord knows, when I first moved here, I remember thinking, thank God there's some architects on the, like Victoria Bradshaw, I think was one, and I can't remember, maybe Mike Kennedy's an architect. Like, I was like,
Yes, Peter
I don't-
Dessar.
some of these concepts I don't as a layman, I kind of get, but I'm not,
And being on the opposite side of that table so many times, having those discussions, because a lot of people aren't in the industry, like you said, they don't see these materials changing and
Yeah.
a better way or easier way to do things. And I've spent many, many hours in here either talking to HLC, this is years ago, and the town council and all of those other various boards about, there are other ways to do things, there are other materials that we can use, things that have been approved by the MPS and some things that not, and so.
Yeah.
There's things you want to stay away from, vinyl siding.
Yeah.
That kind of cookie cutter look.
Well, I think planning is working on this process to make a recommendation to council. So I don't know that, we have to make a decision about it, or we could
I like the
weigh
idea
in
of
and,
having the OCO at least consult with a member of the HLC, not wait for a meeting, right? Not delay the process with a meeting. And also your idea of like encouraging applicants to come in. It'd be nice if we did a motion or something and just said, these are 2 concepts that I've seen in the process. At least, things we can agree on and are concrete. I think there's so much more to it. I still think we need professional help. I'm not
Still
gonna
stuck
say
at
off of
that sticky point of he deems that there's more information that's required, and him sending it to HLC and not to the Board of Zoning Appeals.
But if let's just say he sits down with somebody, Steve Sherry, and it's like, I can't really tell. So what do we want Kevin to do? I think he should go back to the applicant and get more information so Steve Sherry can come back and look at it and say, oh, okay. Like, I think that's a reasonable process. Like, you're gonna have incomplete applications, and that's on the applicant to get the information there, because to me, I think they've gotta
That's
create the
very
picture
true,
of the
but
project.
at some point when this is accepted and weeks go by and it's not reviewed, or it's reviewed and maybe it goes through HLC, Kevin kicks it to Historic Landmarks, and then it comes to the BZA. At that point, we say, well, your application isn't complete because you're missing a measurement off the corner of the house to your property line or something like that.
That's a different issue you're talking about. That's a completeness check that, to me, again, we have planners and engineers behind them. They're going to say, this is not a site plan. You're missing, square footage of. I can't tell the square footage of the driveways. You have so many square feet in the ordinance. Boom, 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 boom. And that to me, that should be the first thing he does when he gets the application.
Under new construction, it says new construction shall be evaluated on a case-by-case basis for compatibility in form, scale, mass, setback, spacing, height, fenestration, blah, 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 orientation with the context of the surrounding historic structures within the neighborhood. Less flexibility in design shall be permitted in areas where there are a greater number of contributing structures. Like, that seems like a very hard thing for one part-time person who doesn't live here to make a decision about. It seems like it requires some more expertise if this is
And
a
a very slippery
requirement.
slope if they decide something like that.
yeah, that's why it's unlikely the OCO, I think there's even a dollar cap on what he can approve.
I think people have searched for that. I've heard that number. I've heard numbers tossed around. I've never seen one.
I thought it was, I know there was a signed policy, I think it was, that was for $25,000. Anything over that, you can't approve. And I think that was part of the concern, that anything complex, like a new house, was just beyond what we want the
Yeah.
OCO approving.
Yeah, I don't see how a whole new house could be something that they could do everything right the first time and he could figure that out.
Because it's complex.
Yeah.
It's happened.
Oh, I know, and
I don't
We
know
have
if
some
where
houses that-
policies are kept. Maybe we need to ask Pat or Greg for that.
thank you.
But,
Yeah, so I get small projects like the retaining wall or whatever, he doesn't have to like go to the BZA every time, or the HLC, but it seems like when you get a new construction project,
There's a lot to think about.
yeah, like how can he not go somewhere for help?
yeah, and there was a timeline that I couldn't find. Maybe again, it's in policy, I don't know. Does anyone know that was like the OCO has 10 days to either approve a permit or to notify the BZA
Yeah, that seems weird.
that he cannot.
I'm sure that's in there. I know we have 45 from our hearing to make a decision. Right?
And so once we get it, we have to schedule that hearing within 45, right? And then after the hearing, we have 45 days to render a decision.
Yeah.
But,
Actually, it might be 30 for us. I think it's 45 to have the hearing. 30 might be the decision.
I have
Does the OCO have his own section? I'm trying
the
to
date
remember.
code for that. I don't think it would be under the administrative part. It's very brief. There is one for him, but it's very brief. Oh, we have 10 days. This is appeals, which a permit application really isn't, but I think it would be good if we followed the same time frame. Within 10 days, we shall schedule the hearing, and then the hearing must be held within 45 days of receipt. And then 30 days, you're right, after the hearing.
I don't see any.
Well, there was a process or policy that was adopted, but where did you find it?
Mhm.
Yeah. That's the other reason I'd love to have the planning engineering firm, just record keeping. It's another piece of just setting up a good system.
Well, I think it would be nice if we are to hire staff, that one of their roles would be as OCO. I don't think that's a full-time job, but it'd be nice if it were someone who is here full-time. And part of their job requirement is to know these backwards and forwards.
So it seems like maybe your flow chart, like this works if it's a big project like building a new house, but maybe it's overkill if it's putting a new roof on or a fence
Yeah.
or something, I don't know.
For big, and it doesn't say HLC member or something in that first step for an opinion for the bigger projects. But Ed's saying if there's the policy, if we have that policy of the 25K or whatever, anything above that, then he's got to come to us. Just he hands it off to us. Right? If that policy exists. But I don't think we can see.
We might have it.
Say that again, David?
So it's either like that policy that Ed talked about, that projects greater than 25 grand need to be kicked to BZA automatically. BZA is the proper authority.
Well, that would certainly simplify.
So for the larger complex, so the architectural feature thing doesn't become as big a deal, I think, with things under 25,000. Still.
Well, then you're looking at probably porch replacement, window replacement, a shed.
Right.
You know, that really contains
Yeah,
a lot of the issues.
yeah, which makes sense that he could handle those things.
Yeah.
Because he could knock them through fairly quickly, and those are the things.
So,
But absent that, then it's sort of this, encourage him to go to HLC, at least some member, don't make it formal, and just determine, go through materials, go through architectural features with that person, and make sure there aren't any, you're getting wayward of Appendix A, basically.
there was this from 2015 that said that the OCO must administratively review a permit application within 2 to 3 days. And
So Kevin can't go on vacation.
that's right. Or mayor's designee. So the mayor can appoint a sub.
I was gonna say, I'm gonna wait till Kevin gets back from vacation.
The OCO is authorized to administratively approve an application that does not propose demolition or removal of a contributing structure. The estimated value is more than 25,000, and that all proposed elements are clearly within the permitted uses, the historic district standards and guidelines, and fully complies with the zoning ordinance.
In theory, he's doing 1 and 3 now.
And it does say, I did see it earlier, it says he has,
Is that Jay Winchester's signature?
it's mine and Jay's. It was from Planning and Landmarks at the time. And
So you're proposing this to town council to make this a
well, it was
town council?
it was concurred by the town council, but I don't know where the signed copy was.
It was, okay.
Under the old flow chart. But they did sign it, but I don't have the signed copy. Still, it's an earlier date. I think we probably need to ask Patty or.
So these are the things
Melissa.
to me, again, if we had a planning and engineering firm on retainer, they know this is a key document and they've got it and they have it housed somewhere. You can't expect.
And they can respond accordingly based on what the
Yeah.
permit application was. Yeah, I agree.
Can't keep relying on, oh, so-and-so was on the planning commission, then let's call him or her.
Right.
Look back at our notes from 2009.
It's very, what's my search feature I'm gonna use here?
Yeah.
Amazingly, Ed is on top.
That's a problem with, all volunteer
Yep.
staff. It always has been.
So my thought is
I'll see if I can't find something.
How about if we formalize a motion, I formalize a motion that says, at least encourage the permit process to include the encouragement of applicants to meet with the OCO prior to submitting the application or upon submitting, prior to.
What about the inclusion of that information on the application?
And including that on the application.
Well,
Like,
I would say upon, because prior to means they might not have the form filled out. And I think Kevin needs to see the form so he can identify or walk through it with them.
How about, or we could say a complete application, meet with your complete application prior to submitting something, and they can pick that moment, yeah. And then the second, and you were saying put it on the application form as well.
just did some old type somewhere, you were highly encouraged to, and that really should be one of Kevin's checkoff points is, okay, I've met with this applicant, we've gone over it.
Yeah.
Maybe it was complete, maybe it wasn't, maybe he sends them back and they come back and I think that would help out greatly.
And then the other thing would be to encourage OCO to meet with an HLC member to deal with the architectural features issues, to help identify variances to architectural features in Appendix A. Does that make, we gotta raise her pay.
That's for even if somebody's building a new house, he just has to chat with one of
Unless
the
Ed
HLC
finds that
members.
proposal, that, enough we can identify.
Unless
that.
they're building a house for under 25,000.
A tiny house, that's a trend.
Yeah. Well, even those, I don't think you.
I don't think
Mine-
you're 25.
Mine wasn't 25.
Yeah.
Did you use an architect? No, you just had to build it.
We had
Sorry. that's-
plans in a magazine and we adapted.
Okay.
Is there anything we could do to resurrect this policy?
I think it's still in effect.
$25,000?
Yeah,
It's just Kevin may have forgotten about it, and a lot of people probably have never seen it.
Yeah, what's the flow of information from this board to Kevin, and how does that become a policy other than going to the town council and them issuing him a memo, for lack of a better term? Like, hey, this is really what you should probably be doing, because this is a good idea and it would help everybody.
Yeah. I mean,
And here are the other, just as a reminder, here is the limit of what you can prove without X, Y, Z.
yeah.
Because he may not know. And I'm sure the guy had no formal training, really, here.
Yeah. We went through the application form. I remember talking with Hap about it, and I think she said she went through the application form with them, but
They probably got help,
they,
read this.
yeah. So,
Thanks for coming out.
yeah, right. On the job training, it's called.
Right.
Yeah, I know they developed, didn't they develop binders for different,
Is there a
Positions.
handbook, guideline?
I thought they did, I don't know if they created one for the OCO, it might be in there.
No, well. You don't have to formalize as a motion. I can just, because Greg wanted to meet quarterly to just go over permit process issues since we're not gonna be able to hire anyone right now in the budget, but and just kind of talk through things and try to, process improvement.
Yeah, I don't know what emotion would be sending it to there's no finality with this process at this point, right?
No,
We're not issuing any permission with anything.
no, but I mean, forms might get officially changed.
Sure.
Which is fine. I'm not sure they need. I mean, I can convey the opinion of the BZA to them just as easily as we do it as a motion, but I don't know.
Is that a quarterly thing you're doing with Greg and that group that you've been with before, kind of just
We've done it
slowly
once.
working on this?
Yeah, and he said, at the end of it, he said, why don't we try to do this quarterly? So hopefully we will.
Well, certainly that, I would think, would probably be.
Yeah.
And then how do you package all that? Get it to the policy.
Yeah.
Look how long it took to change the fence ordinance.
Right. I was unplanning at that time. Still low and back, actually.
Oh boy,
Yeah.
back in the day.
Yeah. So, what's your pleasure? Do we do a motion? We just take
I think it's
the
just
information
an
with me.
ongoing conversation, and again, we'll
Yeah.
group with Greg and, try to keep following this thing in a direction that's gonna make sense and for our system currently, until we get this engineering group or whoever these consultants, if that should ever happen, we're gonna have to figure out a way how to do this.
Yeah, Chris and I found the West Virginia Land Institute out of
Yeah, I remember you
WVU.
mentioning that name before.
I tell you, he had a conversation with him independently of me. We didn't know we were doing this, and we both kind of walked in and we're talking. It's like, yeah, they feel like the perfect fit actually for what we're trying to do, and they actually didn't consult the towns when they first formed themselves, but they realized all these small towns need this help.
Wasn't this a WVU extension or something?
Yeah,
Program or something they go?
it's WVU Land. I think it's called Land. Maybe Land Sustainability Institute. I have to look it up.
But that's not free, right? There's still
It's
a
not
cost.
fee, they'll cost, but I think my initial impression is there wouldn't be as much as a regular engineering and planning firm. So, because they have sort of a mission to, improve West Virginia. They could, come in at a lower rate.
So, and are we addressing the concern that you expressed in this email?
Yes, I think my primary concern is not creating further delay in the application timeline. So I'm perfectly happy if Kevin wants to have a one-on-one with someone from Landmarks to get their opinion. But I wouldn't want to wait for a
Make it a formal
meeting to be
Yeah.
held.
Yeah. So the HLC members have to be comfortable with doing that with him.
Or do it in parallel. If he wants to go ahead and engage them, I mean, really, it's our responsibility to ask for a recommendation from Landmarks, but I'd be okay if Kevin saw that that might be useful for a particular application.
Well, okay. I think in some of those attorney questions in here, you'll find that we were told Kevin can go directly to HLC and get opinions. No.
Was that some of that Rob Case
Yeah.
stuff going back?
All that. We had oh God, I'm drawing a blank on the attorney. It was a land use attorney we had, and we had all these questions. It was kind of surrounding the hotel process, but it related to a lot of things. And one of them was simply, I think Linda Rago asked a simple question: can the OCO ask for advice directly from the HLC? And he said yes. That's in there.
Yeah, I think he's free to rely on anyone's
Yeah.
advice
Yeah.
he feels pertinent.
There's a random question 3. Can the ordinance compliance officer, ask Historic Landmarks Commission for comment? Answer is yes, but the OCO's decision may be appealed to the BZA if an interested party disagrees with the OCO's decision.
Yeah.
Does the OCO have the sole power to issue a building permits if no variance or conditional use is necessary? The OCO's judgment answer is yes, but the OCO's decision is appealable to the BZA. But that bypasses the $25,000.
If he didn't know about
He
that
didn't probably
when
know
he
about
made that
that,
decision, so that would change things.
Yeah.
And so we probably have to get the attorney to decide how binding that memo is.
So here's a question too, they can appeal the OCO's decision. If the OCO's decision is always yes, can someone else other than the applicant appeal the yes decision?
It says that his decision is appealable, it doesn't say by whom.
I think you have to show.
I mean, we're getting into some legalese here, I think.
Yeah, I think you have to be able to show damage,
Okay.
but I'm not sure about that.
Or
Ask
you
a
can
lawyer.
appeal by referencing something you feel is in the ordinance.
Yeah. Yeah, I think if you feel like,
Your fence is 8 feet tall and I say no, it's 6. I can appeal that as a resident, can I not, to the BZA? That would make sense. I mean, it wouldn't be appeal, it would be. Okay.
Yeah, that would be part of it. Yeah.
Well, it would be a disagreement, with, whatever you want to call it, but you could appeal that ruling, the decision.
Today, part of the process too, today's.
but if they're
hearings, a good
challenging us, I
example,
think it
having an
goes to
attorney here
circuit
would have been
court.
helpful. Because we kind
But I
of,
guess
So
if they're
does it?
challenging the
and if I
OCO,
watch
it goes
Jefferson
to
County
us.
do their thing,
It
they
goes to us.
have an attorney there all the
But
time.
I think if we're challenged, it goes to.
It's just expensive. Yeah, as a town. All right, do we wanna, you guys wanna adjourn?
I make that motion.
All right,
I'll second.
For hands or just orders?
All those in favor?
Jump.
Aye.
So second quarterly meeting done. I think applications are coming down like only because I just see a lot of activity, so we'll see. I'll keep you guys posted. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, is that really 5 permit applications or 6?
Yeah. Well, those are issued. That's for parking area. Approved. This is Chad.
I'm gonna get realized.
This is, see, this went to landmarks too.